Talking Virginia Tech football today with former Virginia Tech Hokie from 69 to 72, former tight end Mike Burnop. He's also the color analyst, which he has filled that spot since 1986 for Virginia Tech. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really, really well. It's a beautiful day here, and the sun came up.
That's always good. And just kind of talk about Frank Beamer. Of course, he just recently announced that at the end of the 2015 season, it will be his last at Virginia Tech. Just talk about his decision and what he's meant to Virginia Tech football.
Well, it was kind of a surprise, I think, to a lot of people that he was going to go ahead and announce the retirement when he did. I think a lot of people thought that he would wait until either the end of this year, depending on how things turned out, or I think what he ultimately wanted to do was coach through next year. That would give him 30 years. It would also allow him to coach down in Bristol against Tennessee in the big game there, and it would also allow him to go to Notre Dame and coach there, since that's on the schedule next year. Kind of what happened, I think, he went through that stretch where he had 10-win seasons, 8 in a row, and then had some subpar seasons, at least subpar for Virginia Tech. So after the Sugar Bowl loss to Michigan in 2011, you go back through there, and they went 7-6, 8-5, 7-6, and then, of course, this year they're sitting there at 4-5. The year and maybe let somebody else take over, that kind of thing. And then I think Frank just kind of felt like, you know what, I don't want to divide the Hokie Nation. He wants to make sure everybody's on the same page. So he went ahead and announced it during the open date week. That way he could get all the talk about it out of the way before they had to start back to practice today and get ready for the last 3 games, because the Hokies will play Georgia Tech next Thursday in Atlanta. And that's kind of how it came down. I knew it was going to happen sooner or later, but I was hoping it would be at the end of next year. But that's just the way it goes sometimes in this business.
Well, Mike, you talked about him not wanting to divide the Hokie Nation. Do you think there was any division there?
There was a small group, a vocal group that never seems to be happy. You know how it is. It's just like that in Tennessee and everywhere else. You get this group of boosters that probably think the game has passed him by, or we're getting hurt in recruiting, or whatever. The money's not coming in. We're not selling out the stadium, and then they get a little bit vocal when they really don't look at the big picture and realize exactly what all he's done to this university and for this university, and the fact that we lost our quarterback, like the first series of the third quarter against Ohio State when the Hokies had the lead, 17-14 in the half in that game. So you lose Michael Brewer for, the equivalent of, he's played not even 3 total games out of the 9 that we have played. So that is a big factor. And then you lose your All-American defensive back, Kendall Fuller, to injury, knee injury. And then C.J. Rivas, who was our best player coming out of spring practice as a defensive back, he gets kicked out of school for something that, if you went through the legal court system, would have gotten tossed out. But it went through one of those like honor court type things here as opposed to a real court. And so some different circumstances have been a big part of why this team has struggled on the defensive side of the ball, and why offensively they didn't do great when Brewer was out of the game. So that's part of the problem why they've had a semi-subpar year.
Mike, you mentioned Coach Beamer has done a lot for this program, and that's quite obvious with what he's done since 1987. And you played there before Frank Beamer came on as a head coach at Virginia Tech. Just talk about the program before he took over in 87 and just kind of leading up to how long it took him. A few years to build this program. Just kind of talk about before and after.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was being recruited at Virginia Tech, I watched Frank Beamer play. And so obviously I've been around a long time, and he was a heck of a player in his own day. And then when he came in, you're talking about taking over a program that Bill Dooley was coaching, and it was really at its highest point, because the Hokies in 1986 went 10-1-1 and won the Peach Bowl, which was the first bowl game Virginia Tech had ever won. And so then Frank Beamer comes in, which I was at his press conference when he got hired. He comes in and they go 2-9. Next year they go 3-8, and so it was a little bit rough sledding there early on. And I think, of course, part of the issue was Bill Dooley left them on probation. There were some scholarship issues and loss of scholarships, so he kind of inherited a little bit of a mess. And so for the first 6 years, they struggled somewhat and only had 2 winning seasons, and those were just with 6 wins. So it wasn't like he was setting the world on fire. And then the kind of the decision time came in 1992 when the Hokies went 2-8-1. I mean, you talk about rough sledding there now. When they won those 2 games, or 2 of the first 3, and they beat, I think, James Madison and Temple that year, proceeded to lose the rest. And so, there was a lot of rumbling then, and the athletic director at that time, Dave Brain, talked about, I think he's the right guy for the job. I've watched him. I know what they're trying to do. They kind of came up with a little bit more money to get better assistant coaches. And then the next year was in 1993 when they started the bowl streak. Went 9-3, beat into Indiana in the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana. And that kind of started the string of the 22 bowl games. And so the university was patient with him. They stuck with him. And in turn, when he had opportunities to leave Virginia Tech, he always remembered that point in time. And, of course, he played here. He was very loyal to Virginia Tech, and I think that's a big reason why he stayed for 29 years.
How important was Michael Vick to this program? Obviously, in '99, that they played for the national championship against Florida State, came a little bit short, but it was so exciting to watch him. I mean, obviously, he redshirted in '98 and then '99 and 2000. Just awesome to watch him play. The whole country loved to watch him play, and he just took games over just with his athleticism. But how big was Michael Vick for this program?
Well, it was big. I think if you back up, though, a little bit, I think when Coach Beamer was here first, the Virginia Tech was an independent, and so it was a little bit difficult trying to get exposure unless you were Notre Dame or Florida State at the time, and you didn't have an avenue for very many bowl games. And so I think when you go back and think about when the Hokies got into the Big East, that was certainly the first big step. And then, obviously, getting people like Michael Vick to come into the program was certainly huge. But, you go back to 1995 when the Hokies lost the first 2 games and then got on the winning streak and won 10 in a row and beat Texas in the Sugar Bowl. Coach Beamer points to that as a marquee win because it was a win over a named program like Texas. And it was a Sugar Bowl, and it kind of put Virginia Tech on the map. So I think that led to getting more players like the Michael Vick type into the program. And yeah, he did redshirt the next year. I mean, just absolutely spectacular. And Bobby Bowden talked about that after that game, that, gosh, he was the best player on the field. Hokies had to lead into the fourth quarter, but ended up losing the game. And ironically, some special teams flub-ups were part of the reason why Florida State was able to win that game. But that was certainly huge. He was incredibly gifted, incredibly talented. They thought that they had a shot the next year to possibly win it. And then the Hokies had a huge game against Miami in 2000 that both teams were highly ranked. Michael Vick was out, did not play in the game, and the Hokies lost, I think, 41-21, and ended up going 11-1, but had to settle for play Clemson in the what did they play in the Gator Bowl, maybe, I think. And so one of those deals there where, it's really, really hard to get back to the national championship game. But Michael Vick was a big part of that, and Coach obviously never forgot about it. And then you think about the rest of it, the fact that when Michael Vick was here, the admissions office got overwhelmed with people wanting to come to Virginia Tech. So you think about the rest of the story, the growth in Blacksburg and the hotels that sprouted up and the expansion of the stadium. I mean, it's hard to put a figure on what Coach Beamer has meant to this program.
We'll talk about Battle at Bristol next year. It's going to be the most people and to see a college football game. How bad did Coach Beamer want to coach that?
I think he's really disappointed in that, and I'm sure he'll end up going. But I think it was one of those things that was one of those top priorities. That could be a once-in-a-lifetime deal there to get to coach in that game, and the biggest crowd in the history of college football. So I think it would be on anybody's bucket list. So disappointed, I'm sure he is. Probably won't say much about that in the big picture of people.
What are your thoughts on that game? Because covering Tennessee, I mean, you always heard the rumors of it could happening, and I think Frank Beamer wanted it in the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't think Phil Fulmer really wanted for that game to go on because he would lose a home game out of it. But your thoughts on that game in Bristol?
I'm excited about it. I was hoping Coach Beamer would be there. Now you got the indecision about what's going to happen here, who's going to be the coach. When you have change like that, sometimes it doesn't work very well because you're thinking about a completely new system being put into place. And it could be that it's a new system on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. And with the time constraints on practice time and players now, it could be that the Hokies will go in there as big underdogs. Not that they would be little underdogs next year. You just never know looking ahead. But I'm looking forward to the game and part of the experience, and I'm going to make sure I got a great pair of binoculars. You're going to look like a bunch of ants running around. But it's going to be fun and should be just unbelievably exciting.
Well, Mike, I do appreciate you taking the time to talk about Coach Beamer and what he's meant not only to the Virginia Tech football program, but to the sport of college football.
Yeah, he's the best. I mean, you think about the phenomenon of Beamer ball, he kind of took that to another level, and it's been just a pleasure to work with him, calling every one of his games all through the years, and a real privilege and honor, and just a great guy.